The room was silent, except for the rhythmic drip of rain against the metal roof. Emily sat at the edge of the cot, hands trembling as she replayed the moment again and again. The explosion, the dust, the voice that had called her name before vanishing under the roar of a collapsing stone. She'd saved him. A Navy SEAL, wounded and unconscious, dragging him through fire and shrapnel when everyone else had fallen back. But instead of gratitude, they gave her discharge papers. "You broke the chain of command," they said. "You acted alone." Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're rewatching from. I love knowing who is listening. That night, she packed her duffel in silence. The base lights flickered in the rain, distant thunder rolling over the mountains like an echo of her heart. Every medal, every memory, they all felt hollow now. She had saved a life, and somehow that had cost her everything. When she boarded the transport out of the base, the soldiers avoided her eyes. Some whispered. Others looked away. But one young medic saluted her quietly, eyes filled with something between guilt and admiration. Emily nodded back, a small, weary smile. Then she was gone. Into the storm, into the unknown. By morning, she was home, or what was left of it. The small coastal town was the kind of place where the sea could swallow secrets and the wind carried stories no one dared to speak. Her mother had passed years ago. Her father's old boat still sat by the dock, rusted and forgotten. She spent the next day fixing its broken boards, trying to fix herself too. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw the man she'd saved, the SEAL whose name she never knew. She thought she'd never see him again. She was wrong. It started with a knock, soft, deliberate, the kind that carries weight, the kind that makes your heart pause mid-beat. Emily looked up from the table where her discharge papers still lay, half folded. The rain had stopped, and a strange stillness filled the air. When she opened the door, the world seemed to still. There he was, the same man she had dragged from the rubble. His face was scarred, but his eyes were unmistakable, sharp, grateful, human. "Ma'am," he said quietly, voice hoarse but steady, "you saved my life." Emily froze, words caught in her throat. You're supposed to be in recovery," she managed. "I was, but I couldn't stay there knowing you took the fall for doing the right thing." He stepped closer, holding out a sealed envelope. "You didn't just save me. You saved my team." Inside was a letter. Official, stamped, signed by the Joint Command. A recommendation for reinstatement. A commendation for valor. A single line at the bottom read, "Actions above and beyond protocol, in service of life and honor." Her breath hitched. The same superiors who had dismissed her were now rewriting her fate. But that wasn't what made her eyes well up. It was the fact that he'd come himself, that after everything, someone had cared enough to make it right. The next morning, the two stood at the docks as the sun broke through the horizon. The sea glittered gold. He told her how he'd fought for her case, how her actions had been recorded in fragments of radio chatter and helmet cams. "They didn't want to admit their mistake," he said softly. "But truth has a way of surfacing, like tide against stone." Emily looked at him for a long moment, the waves lapping softly at the pier. "I wasn't looking for credit," she said. "Just for it to mean something." He smiled, the kind of smile that carried the weight of loss, gratitude, and promise all at once. It did. It still does. And for the first time in months, she felt the heavy fog inside her chest begin to lift. A week later, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. It was Command. "Lieutenant Carter," the voice said, firm but calm. "We'd like you to return. Not as a soldier this time. As an instructor. We need people who understand what courage really means." Her eyes filled with tears she didn't try to hide. The same uniform that once broke her now called her back, not for what she'd done wrong, but for what she'd done right. That evening, she walked along the shore. The wind carried salt and promise. She thought about the faces she'd left behind, the choices she'd made, the cost of compassion in a world that often mistook it for weakness. But maybe that was the point. Maybe doing the right thing was never about permission. Months later, recruits would whisper her name in the training fields. "That's her," they'd say, "the one who saved a SEAL and lost everything for it." And Emily would smile, saying nothing, only watching them learn to trust their instincts, their humanity. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, she'd hear another knock, the same SEAL, visiting just to share a story, a laugh, or a memory. They didn't talk about the war. They didn't have to. Some bonds didn't need words. They were written in survival, in sacrifice, in the choice to do what's right when no one's watching, because kindness doesn't vanish. It waits, and it finds its way back. And sometimes, the sound of one quiet knock is all it takes to remind us that courage once given never truly leaves. If this story moved you, tell me in the comments what you would have done in her place, and don't forget to subscribe to Whispered Words, where true courage finds a voice every week.